Can a simple on-off switch bring down an airplane? That is what the initial investigation report of the Air India flight AI-171 crash seems to suggest. Here's what is said and what we think may have happened. On June 12, 2025, Air India flight AI-171 lifted off from Ahmedabad airport bound for London. But just 32 seconds into the flight, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner lost all thrust and crashed into a residential area outside the airport. It burst into flames on impact, killing 260 people, including almost everyone on board and 19 people on the ground. This became the deadliest aviation disaster globally in a decade. But what caused it? The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, has just released a preliminary report. Here's what it found. Everything looked fine until 3 seconds after liftoff. At the speed of 180 knots, both engine fuel control switches, which ensure that fuel is reaching the engine, were suddenly moved to switch off, almost simultaneously. The GE engine's turbofans immediately lost power, and there was no thrust to keep the plane in the air. The aircraft had only climbed a few hundred feet and then began to fall. The cockpit voice recorder captured a chilling exchange. One of the pilots asked the other, "Why did you switch off?" The second pilot replied, "I did not do so." The pilots even tried to reignite the engine per the report, but the plane was too low with too little time. Then a desperate mayday call went out seconds before the crash. The data recorder stopped just before the aircraft slammed into the ground, disintegrating on impact. So, how could both engines of a Boeing 787 shut down seconds after takeoff? The report confirms that fuel was cut off to the engine with the switch. But why would anyone do that? Let's try answering that question. Human error is the first and the most debated theory. Commercial aircraft cockpits are designed with serious safeguards. For both fuel switches to flip mid-air, human interaction had to be involved. But here's the issue. The switches are guarded. There's a physical latch to prevent accidental movement. They require deliberate action by the pilots. This points towards human error with deadly consequences. And that wouldn't be surprising in aviation. In 2015, Trans-Asia Airways Flight 235T here, an ATR-72 twin-prop lost one engine shortly after takeoff. Instead of shutting down the failing one, the pilot mistakenly disabled the good engine. His last recorded words were acknowledging his mistake. The aircraft stalled and crashed into a river, killing 43 people. Could something similar have occurred in the Air India cockpit? It's possible. One theory suggests that a pilot might have interpreted a false warning, like an abnormal engine reading, and responded by reaching for what they thought was the correct switch. And it's possible to make a mistake like that. The takeoff phase is intense. Rapid checklists, airspeed calls, etc. Under stress, even experienced pilots can make split-second errors. But here's the twist. Both pilots in the Air India cockpit denied touching the switches. The cockpit voice recorder captured their confusion. "Why did you cut off? I did not do so." This mutual denial suggests either a serious miscommunication or that it wasn't human error at all. Let's now consider something rarer, but not impossible. A mechanical or design failure. Fuel control switches are designed to stay in the run position under all normal conditions. They aren't connected to autopilot, flight computers, or any automation. No system would ever intentionally move them to cut off during flight. But back in 2018, Boeing issued an alert, known as a Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, or SAIB, warning that on some aircraft the locking mechanism on these switches could be misinstalled. Essentially, the latch might look secure, but not actually engage. In that state, a switch could potentially be bumped or even shift from vibrations during climb-out. Air India acknowledged that their aircraft, VT-A&B, had never been checked under this SAIB. Even though the aircraft had undergone throttle module replacements in 2019 and 2023, there was no record of the fuel switch locks being inspected. If those locks could not be engaged, then turbulence, gear retraction shock, or even cockpit activity might have nudged the switches out of run, without any pilot touching them. This wouldn't be the first time latent design flaws have caused tragic outcomes. In 2009, a faulty radar altimeter sent wrong data to the autopilot of the Turkish Airlines flight 1951, causing the plane to stall and crash. Nobody anticipated that a single sensor could override pilot commands. With Air India 171, we could be looking at a similarly obscure vulnerability, a 1 in a million failure of cockpit ergonomics or hardware. Now we step into darker territory. Some theorists have raised the question, what if this wasn't an accident? Sadly, history gives us examples where pilots have used their position to commit mass murder. Germanwings Flight 9525 in 2015. The co-pilot locked the captain out and intentionally crashed the Airbus A320 into the Alps, killing all 150 aboard. Egypt Air Flight 990 in 1999. The relief first officer was suspected of intentionally diving the Boeing 767 into the ocean based on voice recordings and control inputs. In both cases, cockpit actions, deliberate and silent, led to catastrophic loss of life. But the Air India case doesn't fit this mold cleanly. Why? Because of two key details. The pilots tried to restart the engines, moving the switches back to run, and one of them made a mayday call, indicating distress and a desire to survive. These actions strongly suggest the crew wasn't trying to crash. It really undermines the sabotage theory. Still, investigators will probe this angle thoroughly, examining pilot histories, psychological records, and even recent life events. Until then, this remains a possibility, but an unlikely one. Finally, we consider the possibility that we're looking at a failure mode nobody has seen before. A combination of software, hardware, or electromagnetic interference that triggered an uncommanded fuel cutoff. Modern aircraft like the 787 are fly-by-wire, controlled by digital computers with thousands of data points. Could a corrupted input or signal have simulated a shutdown command? A similar mystery plagued Qantas Flight 72 back in 2008, an Airbus A330 that suffered multiple violent nosedives due to a faulty air data sensor feeding bad data to the flight control computer. The plane thought it was stalling and pushed the nose down automatically. If something like that were influencing the fuel switches on AI-171, perhaps via a rogue electrical signal or faulty wiring in the control panel, it could explain the dual cutoff. But again, no evidence of such interference has yet been found, and Boeing has not issued any alerts, suggesting they too haven't identified a repeatable fault. The AAIB hasn't yet issued any safety directives for the 787 or GEnx engines. Boeing and GE are watching closely, but so far there's no smoking gun. In the coming months, here's what's likely to happen. Detailed forensic exams of the throttle module and cockpit controls, in-depth background checks on the pilots, possible simulations of the cockpit scenario, and pressure on regulators to review fuel switch design and maintenance compliance. The final report is expected within the next year. This crash is a haunting reminder that even in modern aviation, the smallest system, a switch, can bring down a giant. Was it a freak mechanical glitch? A 1 in a billion human error, or something darker? As the investigation unfolds, we'll continue to follow every development. If you want updates when the final report is out, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Stay safe and stay informed.